What's up, dudes and dudettes? So today we're talking about returning from injury. I know, not the sexiest topic in the world, but something that is very important to people who either are injured or have been injured or will possibly be injured in the future. Now, newsflash, you're in one of those categories, whether you know it or not. So first, assess the injury. Is it chronic? Is it acute? So chronic is something that's going to be happening over a long period of time, and this is pretty easy to identify. It might start with a very small ache or a pain, and then it can progress either fairly rapidly or quite gradually. And a chronic injury is good in the sense that you can actually sense it early and then make adjustments to avoid it entirely. That doesn't always happen though. Now, acute injury is something that happens right away. Now, I put these into two different categories. The first is bad, right? Like if you're bench pressing and something just snaps and now your pec is like hanging down over your abs and stuff like that, you're probably going to need surgery. The other type of acute injury is where it is sharp, it is sudden, it is something that happens in the moment, but it's not that bad, right? Like you tweak a muscle, or maybe it's a very, very minor tear, something that is not going to require surgery to actually fix. Now, sometimes you don't actually know which is which, and there is a little bit of a gray area, and so in some cases you might need an MRI or something else to actually determine if it's a type 1 or a type 2 acute injury. Next, you're going to want to do damage control, so rest, compression, elevation, the Rice method. I think there's some good information about that. Anti-inflammatories can help a little bit. Often the body will overreact by creating too much inflammation, which can limit the range of motion and can actually prolong your recovery time. Definitely don't overdo these, however, since the inflammation is there for a reason, and it actually can help the recovery process in moderation. And so you don't want too much inflammation, you don't want too little inflammation either. Also realize that largely due to this inflammation, it might be worse the second day compared to the first day that you get it. So, maybe you were deadlifting and you feel something in your lower back.
The funny thing about my back is...
And it's not that bad, but the next day you wake up and you can basically not move.
My back! No, my back, Tom!
Next, I think it's important to assess why this injury might have occurred. Usually you can prevent injuries, and you should learn from this experience. There are positives to take out of it if you actually take the time to think about why this happened. Sometimes it's something completely random that you didn't really have control over. Maybe some asshole came up with a 45-pound plate and smacked you in the head when you were dumbbell bench pressing. Too early? Too soon? Or maybe you just dropped a dumbbell on your foot or something like that. There is a little bit of randomness. I've heard of just injuries that didn't even happen in the gym, and you just, reaching down to pick something up or something like that. Some things are not really preventable. However, I would say most are. Maybe it was too much volume, too much stuff close to failure. Maybe your technique was breaking down. Maybe you got a bad night of sleep. Maybe you were stressed. Studies have shown that college athletes during exam time season are much more at risk for injury. And, you do have to, a certain extent, auto-regulate things. And if you don't feel good, you might have to reduce the volume or to reduce the weight that you are using. It might have just been stupid stuff. A good rule of thumb is that if you're not sure if it's stupid, it's probably stupid.
Fuck thinking we need to act!
Okay, if you're doing a partner-assisted barbell curl, doesn't matter your technique or the volume of their RPE, that's just dumb. There are also some genetic conditions which are sort of out of your control, which you might have to work around. These are fairly rare, and I would say the majority of injuries are not purely genetic, and they are something to do with your training or your technique or your programming. So I would say the vast majority of the time, it's important to take responsibility for your injuries. I've been dealing with a QL issue the past month or 5 weeks or so. It was my fault, right? I felt some hip shift on the squat. The squat isn't what did it. And then I was in a fatigued state. I had been doing too much work involving spinal loading and not taking sufficient recovery. And I just decided to do deficit strict bent over rows, and boom. And that's my fault for not addressing a weakness that I had and for sort of going off program to try to do a new movement in a fatigued state. In hindsight, dumb, and maybe in the future I will be smarter. Hopefully. I think, however, it's also important to stay positive. You can learn something from every injury. And the way I look at injuries is it's just your body showing a weakness on an undesirable level. So this is just an area, a structural weakness that you can correct in the future. The vast majority of injuries, you can bulletproof your body in the future and prevent such issues from happening again. And that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
It's an opportunity to get better. And that's how I look at things. It's not just, oh my God, I'll never be able to do this again. In most cases, you can do that again, and you can do it better because when you correct that weakness, you will be stronger. For most injuries, you want to be as active as possible without pissing the injury off. Usually there's a threshold where if you stay below that, activity is good, and if you go above that, it is bad. Movement can hurt, but it can also heal. For a lot of injuries, especially those to tendons, total rest is absolutely not the answer. It is something that is not going to help at all. And I've heard many stories of people who had an injury. They took like 6 weeks totally off. They went back to the gym, and it was the exact same. It did not heal at all, and that is not the way to go. Also, this might sound obvious, so obvious I didn't even say it, but don't give up. Don't you fucking dare give up, okay? There's a way back, you just gotta find it. And in my book, I have a chart, you can get it on my website up there, where it talks about some exercises that can get blood into an area. So if you have, biceps tendonitis, a preacher curl where you're in a stretched position probably isn't going to be the answer, but maybe a spider curl where you're focusing more on the contraction and it's more of a blood flow pump type of exercise, could be a good idea. This is one time when the pump is a really, really, really good idea. If you have, an upper hamstring area issue, an RDL is probably going to be either downright impossible or just stupid because it's just going to piss that area off even more.
How's that ass feel?
A hamstring curl might be completely fine and speed recovery significantly. So find what you can do to get blood into the area without pissing that area off. It can be a fine line. I'll put the chart here. Just I'll give you a freebie.
You are generous.
Because I think that this can actually speed recovery significantly. And you're going to want to stay below the threshold of injury. Pain is actually a pretty good guide here. If something is like an 8 out of 10 in pain, not helping. Okay, if it's a 3 out of 10, that might be totally fine. Okay, where again, your body is like, yeah, I don't know about this, but if you talk it into it, eventually it says, okay, well, now I'm on board. Just remember, no is not a no, it's a maybe. And as the tissues tolerate it, you are going to want to scale gradually. Test the waters. Don't really set a time course. I find that, if it takes 6 weeks, it's 6 weeks. If it takes 8 weeks, it's 8 weeks. And having an expectation of a certain amount of time might actually get you in trouble. If you think, I threw out my back, I got to get back to squatting the weights I've been squatting in a month. Well, that might actually cause re-injury and issues down the line. You're going to want to be patient, okay? In the grand scheme of things, in your entire weightlifting career, pushing back that recovery time is probably not going to do anything at all in terms of your absolute performance. So whether it is RPE or load or volume or tempo, you're going to want to scale gradually. So start with slower tempos, lighter weights, just focusing again on getting blood into the area, maybe correcting any kind of imbalances that you have. For me, I'm squatting just with quite light weights, baby, and I'm focusing on trying to correct the imbalances in the hips and in the back and in the shoulders that I have. And so taking a step back and doing higher reps, lighter weight, focusing on balance and control and stability and maybe even mobility is a good call rather than just saying, hey, back to 1 rep maxes, Bulgarian system, fuck yeah, bro. A good way to judge RPE is not your own perceived exertion, but your phase. You can use the Baraki exertion scale This is from a Barbell Medicine article, which I will link in the description because it is very, very good. And you can see a 1 on the Baraki scale, like he's just chilling. He's just chilling. A 2, a 3, a 4. All right, now we're getting after it a little bit. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you're getting towards 10. Probably not a good idea if you're already injured. Okay, so
Under pressure. Under pressure.
if you're injured, I would stay, a 1 to 3 on the Baraki exertion scale. You're also going to want to correct whatever issues cause this. This is going to be totally dependent on whatever injury it is. Again, it could be an imbalance, could be a weakness, could be one muscle just overpowering another. Like, there are a lot of things that it could be. And this is where I think prehab can be a thing. So you have this issue, you have this issue, it's a weakness, you have to bring it up. And there might be some exercises that you're going to include in your program year-round because of this issue. Alec Konkiri recently talked about his hip issues, and so he keeps certain movements in his program in there all the time. If he didn't have those issues, he wouldn't keep them in. Same thing for me with this QL issue. I'll probably include more oblique work, more bracing work, maybe some glute medius work, correct the hip imbalances, and keep stuff in my program that is going to be there for me that other people probably shouldn't need to have in their program. If you have, shoulder issues or rotator cuff issues, you might keep some stuff in your program that other people might not need. And I think there's no point in doing prehab for an issue that you might have, because there are literally hundreds of issues of injuries that you might have in the gym, and you shouldn't have the mentality that you're going to try to proactively prevent all of them with no information. Your injuries are extremely useful information, and you should use that information to try to prevent injuries in the future. Finally, I think it's important to move past it, okay? If you had a lower back injury 5 years ago, and then you rehabbed it, and you prehabbed it, and you bulletproofed that area, so to speak, you can move past it mentally. I think a lot of people say, oh, well, I have a bad back. I was like, well, when was the last time you had an issue? 3, 4, 5 years ago. You're fine. Like, you can still pull a heavy deadlift, right? And some people let their injuries linger on in their mind for their entire lives. And I think that's sort of a sad state of existence to choose to be in. And so I realize this video has been a little bit general and maybe hasn't supplied the exact answer for your specific issue. That is intentional because it's a very general video and it's not supposed to provide a solution to every single injury and issue in the gym. However, as a general framework, I think this is a good way to approach things, and I hope it was helpful. All right, for more on injury stuff, my book actually does have an entire chapter on that. So definitely grab a copy of that. I think it will help a lot, as well as programming advice, as well as lots of exercises, all kinds of good shit in there. Grab a copy there on my website, and I will see all y'all in the next video. Peace.